Hello, everybody, and welcome to the L&D Leadership League Twangout on cracking the learning code for Gen Y, a People Matters initiative in association with Center for Creative Leadership, Cornerstone on Demand, Nullscape, PSN Talent Lens, and Great Lakes Institute of Management. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Savita from People Matters, and we'll run you through a little about the league, and then we'll straight away move into the session. This is the second edition to the L&D Leadership League. We will be bringing before you different set of activities that will give us opportunity and ensure that each of us learns, shares, and grows. This year we have half-day conclaves, 30 minutes masterclass, Twangout sessions like this one, annual conferences, L&D Leadership League Awards for the best out of the best practices across industries, monthly newsletters with updates on latest trends. So we have a lot packed up this year. Do make sure you do not miss on any of these, and do ensure you're a part of the league. This has been possible with the help of our partners, Center of Creative Leadership, Cornerstone on Demand, Nullscape, PSN Talent Lens, Great Lakes Institute of Management. With this, I'd like to now introduce you to our host for today's Twangout session. Chivin Tikku, OD Manager at Mahindra & Mahindra. He works on HR strategy, organizational development, and employer branding functions. He has been the winner of Young HR Leaders Are You in the List Awards 2013. Welcome, Shivin. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thanks, Savita.
Our guest for the L&D Leadership League Twangout. He's one whose team has won the L&D Leadership League Awards in the category of Best in Onboarding Solutions, a strategic thinker, innovator. Join me in welcoming Gurpreet Singh Bajaj. Gurpreet Singh Bajaj is the head learning and development MakeMatric.com. Gurpreet specializes in formulating holistic learning and OD strategy, encompassing his expertise in learning and development and various other initiatives. Welcome, Gurpreet. It's a pleasure to have you as a speaker for the third Twangout for us.
Hi, Savita. Thanks, and thanks everybody. Pleasure to be around.
Thank you so much. Before I request Shivin to take over, let me remind you that you can follow this conversation on Twitter using the hashtag #LNDLeague. Please share your comments, questions, posts, thoughts, so that Shivin can pick them all for Gurpreet live through the session. For those not on Twitter yet, you can definitely inbox me or Pranav your questions, and we definitely encourage you to join us on Twitter very, very soon. We have an exciting giveaways at the end of the session for all those who are very active on Twitter. So 1 year of print and digital subscription of People Matters for the most active listener. So keep tweeting. With this, without being between you, Gurpreet, I would request Shivin to take over from here. It's super exciting, and are we ready to go on, Shivin?
Yes, we are. So, good afternoon, everyone. Today, we are talking about an interesting bunch of folks who are A, tech-savvy, they prefer email and WhatsApping over face-to-face contact. B, they are confident, ambitious, and achievement-oriented. C, they crave for attention in form of feedback and guidance. Yes, we are talking about Gen Y, and we are delighted to host Gurpreet Singh Bajaj, Head Learning and Development MakeMatric, to share his thoughts on Gen Y, especially in the context of learning and development. So, Gurpreet, what's your broad thoughts on this entire notion of Gen Y? What, according to you, do they stand for, and what are some of their peculiar traits for this generation?
So, thanks, Shivin, and thanks everybody to join in. It's great to share learnings and, in fact, learn from everybody once we get connected. So, Shivin, to kick off this, to your question of what my broad thoughts are, first, I definitely feel looking at what Gen Y I've been pulling off. First, I feel left out because I think I missed it by a couple of years. And I think on the definition part, I think there is no one definition. I guess they're known by so many names these days. Either you call them the millennials, the iPod, generation, the Nintendo generation, uh, generation Y, not rather than Y. I think that somewhere summarizes what are the common themes and what they really stand for. And described as tech savvy, hands-on, interactive, and collaborative, who want personalized attention, learning, or any sort of a solution. In traits which I see there, some of them you just mentioned, but maybe I'll summarize what are my thoughts. The moment I think and I've seen Gen Ys working within the company, uh, I think what really stands out is confidence, sociability, street smartness, heroic spirit, tenacity, tech savvy, of course, multitasking, uh, a big need for flexibility in all aspects. At the same time, there are a lot of things which are also developing or an opportunity areas for this. Maybe we can talk about that as we go forward. But these key are the qualities which I see particularly clearing out with Gen Ys. And maybe I wanted to spend like a couple of minutes on maybe what's the background behind this, rather than we saying, okay, they are confident and tech savvy and they're difficult to manage. But I think if we look deeply, it's not really a surprise. Like they're raised by parents, they're encouraged to make their own choices right from the way they are developing. Look at our children when we are bringing them up. They're encouraged to make their own choices, taught to question authority. And remember, they were also raised in a consumer economy, which I think has easily passed on as an attitude when they come to work towards their employers as well. Uh, so they expect employers to accommodate that consumer expectation because they were brought up with that empowered parenting style and they're not afraid to express their opinion. At the same time, they were also the first to grow up with computers and internet as a significant part of their lives. All of us have, but I think they've spent significant part. They've never been disconnected. And also constant experience in the network world also had a profound impact in their style in approaching problem solving situations, be it coming to workforce, networking, multiprocessing, even global minded skills, which the traditionalists or the baby boomers couldn't even have imagined. Now these are the things they are naturally born with, they're not even taught. And I think our children can easily teach all of this. When you see a child just looking for a touch screen even on a refrigerator, you know what I'm talking about. And I think other things which are more macro, I guess, and not personality, but they've kind of built up advent of interactive media such as instant messaging, text messaging, blogs, especially multiplayer games. I mean, that's what they've grown up with. Now, remember, apart from fun, they've added a new style of learning and skill sets with this generation, which we can't ignore. And to summarize, this always on and always connected mindset is actually at the heart of everything what Gen Y is all about. Is also a reason for a lot of friction which exists between different generations or the rigidity, but that's the norm.
Sure. Uh, we started with the broad thoughts on the entire Gen Y.
Yeah.
Coming to the organizational context, what are some changes that are required in an organizational context so that we understand and accommodate the Gen Y needs?
So I think one that's a very broad question because as an organization, you hit Gen Y at different employee touch points. So I would say you need to change. We need to really relook at every particular strategy because our customer is becoming very different. It's like the way any industry, let's say the telecom, the marketing, or the product industry has changed. I mean, look at the way TVs or mobiles or anything is sold in the market 10 years back and how is it sold now. In the same way, from an HR point of view, we need to relook at every touch point of this Gen Y, be it attracting them towards your brand, which means your social media strategy. When they come to recruit, they're not coming here for an admin interview. They're also looking at all the methods of getting them attracted. They judge every single thing once they sit. Uh, are you open enough to use remote methods, which might work better for them than calling them every day? How tech savvy are you in terms of internet? Just like what we are doing today, why can't we do this on an interview? Delighting them, Then we come to different touch points, like once they join, it's not, and we can talk more about this. We have onboarding sessions. It's not just about the how things work, it's also the wow, which he expects once he joins the company. Then we look on to the other things like learning, where the classroom is already going towards an extinction, if you ask them, and they expect to learn while they are working on their seats rather than 2 days in a year. And overall development from a career perspective, we'll talk more about this, I'm sure. But I think the need is to really make it real, make it diverse, look beyond the vertical zone. And I think these are a few touch points, I think, which are entirely different as a landscape, almost like, a different person working with you altogether.
Uh, Gurpreet, so you spoke about the employee touch points. That's interesting because our next question is from Kunjal23. That's the Twitter handle, and he says that one of the touch points is the manager, as managers are not Gen Y. So, what do you suggest? How to bridge this gap?
Yeah, I think that's a super question, whoever brought this up, because I think the ball stops at the manager and never before as it was today. You know why? Because what we have seen is because Gen Ys, I've seen particularly, have a very personalized view of everything. Uh, it depends a lot on what manager gives than the organization. So I've seen people working or leaving the company, big brands because of poor managers or maybe lack of understanding this. So I think that's a big one. That if we can have our managers more attuned, or trained or accustomed to managing Gen Y by themselves not being one, I think that's where the magic lies. So I think coming to the point, there is a perception actually by the older generations, and we interview a lot of our managers that the new generations do have an entitlement mentality. They are presumptuous and they want to be accommodated with their demands. Now, these are real challenges of the managers. They expect more and they express differently, and they're also driven by their formative experiences. They're not, as I said earlier, they're not afraid to expect more, whether it's promotion, whether it's an opportunity, whether it's a recognition. They will just come and tell you, and that's what is making the managers very uncomfortable, because according to them, this is seen as rude and presumptuous, while for the Gen Y, it is being open and transparent. Um, and I think the biggest danger might be the impact the emotionally unintelligent or less trained managers are having on the Gen Ys, which can lead to a lot of friction and loss of productivity at workplace. I think it's important to avoid this trap and understand the expectation. What's the emotion which is driving the behavior of the Gen Y, which is important. Where we talk about everything what I just mentioned earlier, that their needs are so different. They need everything so personalized. This Gen Y needs far more level of coaching and mentoring than the earlier ones, because that's how they've been brought up. Within their houses, within their friends, they've relied so much on collaborative learning that they just look around and they just look at their current ecosystem, rather than big joint families. So their association is far more with the manager and the local ecosystem of his team than maybe with the company. And I think that's the first touch point. So I think it's so important for managers to be conscious of this particular need and plan their actions and their relationships accordingly.
Sure. The emotions driving the behavior and how do you customize the approach? Uh, Moving on to onboarding, practices that you have seen in the onboarding function. How has the onboarding function evolved in the recent years to, you know, suit the Gen Y needs, and how can it be customized?
Sure. I think it has gone through a lot of change, if not in practice, but at least in expectations. I can say from a Gen Y, a lot of organizations I've seen are moving their needle up. But I think let me summarize. What is something which is changing, and some of them might be brought to practice. Some of them might be as in a wish list of a Gen Y. Maybe I'll answer both questions there. So first is it's becoming a far more interactive and versus a one way, which means when you join a company, Earlier days, you expected to carry a lot of forms and just sit and listen to a lot of stuff, which will be, kind of doled upon you for maybe even 2, 3, or even 7 days. Now it's become more interactive right from day one, where, like we've been doing this, where we've gamified our induction process. So the moment a new joiner comes, it's not one-way traffic, but it's two-way. So he looks at a lot of information which comes his way, and whether it's a leader talking to him, whether it's a quiz floating at him, and he tries to answer what he knows about the company. Then he can open another Wikipedia and learn more about. It's all in his control, and it's interactive. Another thing is, as a broad theme, I think it's turning to discovery rather than making notes when it comes to onboarding as a philosophy, and we particularly try to do that. Like it is so easy to give him a 400 page manual, and we all know what we have done with them. But give him enough opportunities, make it easy for him to discover. He should know where the things are, and he'll find it himself. In fact, he'll enjoy that more because he'll pick up the thing when he needs, rather than him knowing everything on day one, which he can't carry. To discover, discovering information is one. Technology, of course, I think all this is possible a lot through technology. I'm not saying everything needs technology, but a lot of this is possible through technology, which is being used more. Uh, Also, a lot of social and culture integration and acceptance is coming as a big need for onboarding rather than administrative addition of another employee ID number. So when you go back to your house, are you saying that I've got my ID card? I don't think so. The Gen Y actually goes and says how cool or uncool my workplace is, and by the way, this is my ID card, right? So the needs from a new joiner has become far more administrative. They still exist because they help him function, but he wants to be socially and culturally welcomed, accepted, being feel proud of what his decision is. There's a lot, which I mean, it's a far more demanding consumer. As I said, they've been brought up in a consumer economy. First impressions have mattered a lot. For us, it's actually bad news if a new joiner is sitting on a reception and doing nothing and waiting for something to happen. It's like a VIP. We should be treated like a king on that day. So those are a few things which I think are so important. Uh, and I think to summarize, onboarding is changing from moving from just the how to how and the wows. You just don't need to tell him how things work here, which was the initial planning or objectives of any onboarding program. But you need to reinforce his decision, and that really kickstarts him and makes him a really, really able performer in the first 60, 90 days. So that first day matters so much, and also not just the first day, but the way he's handheld in the next 60 days.
Sure. Um, on the onboarding theme itself, Gurpreet, we have
Yeah,
Siddharth Nagpal. That's a good
yeah.
to know process. So how can gamification make it more fun and engaging?
Sorry, can you say that again? How can gamification?
Gurpreet?
Yeah, can you
So the
just
question
say?
is how, yeah. So the question by Siddharth Nagpal, that's the Twitter handle, is how can gamification make the employee onboarding process more fun and engaging?
Oh yes, I think the name itself says it. Won't all of us want to do this? I mean, today, let's say we're doing a Twangout. It does sound like a game, right? Isn't it? We all logged in, and we punch in some IDs, and there are a few of us who can see, there are a few of us who can type. It's beautiful. If it can gamify, it adds a lot of fun. And sometimes we say, why should it be fun? Because that's the way they've learned everything. That's the way Gen Y has learned. I mean, look at, and I would quote to play with iPad without any manual. See the way they try to play the game in their formative years. Uh, I don't think any one of us have ever taught our children how to play an Angry Bird, right? But he's actually done a few things, and he's got something wrong, he's got something right, and that's how he is. If this was a traditional way of teaching them of how this game works, I'm sure he might still learn. and don't be that addicted to it. So games are so important. I think that's the way we all brought up. It takes a lot of hard work to get the same theme up into something as contextual as all information. But if it can be done like this, you start making work as play, and subconsciously start pushing down that learning. And that's where I think the magic is. It's beautiful. We got some exciting feedback from people who join us. They don't expect all that on day one, and they said, okay, are we getting onboarded or are we competing against each other? And there's one guy who will win, and they can all see each other. They can see the past one. It's really fun. And if you can make something fun, and why shouldn't you do this? Why kill the other person?
Sure. Uh, just to remind the audience that you're watching the live LND Leadership League Twangout with Gurpreet. And in case you have any questions, you can tweet to the Twitter handle using the hashtag LND League. Or you can email your questions to savita.vijayan@peoplematters.in. Gurpreet, one question is from Donna Singh. That's the Twitter handle. It's on onboarding itself. What kind of onboarding exercises can be done for Gen Y?
Sure. I think we've experimented with a few, which I think have worked very well. I think at the core, nothing needs to change. The core needs remain the same. The moment you join a new company, how things work, where things are, who are the right people, uh, what is it in common. I think that thing never changes. So I think first of all, we shouldn't try to play with that. That maybe let's kill all our content and try to tell them something different. But I think the way you do the same thing should be different. I'll cite you an example, and this is an example which is not related to technology, but it's still gamification of a need. So remember when we joined, I'm sure all of us would have been taken to an office tour of the new office. Yeah, I don't know if it was very enjoyable experience, especially if you were in a big group. And there is one person who's like leading the tour as a tour manager, maybe with a flag also, and then he's roaming around that whole big cubicles or departments, and as if it's a zoo, and you take around to those five people everywhere. Here's the monkey, and here's the lion, and here's the bear who's sleeping right now, and here's the ATM, and here is the washroom, and you suddenly start feeling that well, I actually cracked an interview and I joined this company, but can there be a better way? So we thought about it and we said, well, why do that? I mean, that's just so boring, and then nobody hears what's happening, and people on the floor will look as if there is a new breed of species on the floor and we should all wave at them. It's really funny. And it doesn't add, to be honest, it doesn't add to the recall factor because you've been all told and you don't, you personally haven't found anything up. So we said, okay, switch it to discovery and help them mold with the culture. What happens is on day one, we give them a list in the evening activity when they start getting a little tired. We give them a sheet of paper, and in fact there are two papers. One has list of all people, like some of the folks on the floor, not all CEOs. Some of them can be from any department who can be good to know people in the company. And the other sheet, there are landmarks. Basically that's what you need to know, right? Who and where. And we said, okay, we bring them into two groups and say, okay, take about half an hour or an hour, same time which takes for that zoo tour. And we say, okay, run for the floor, find all these things yourself, ask people on the floor. You have badges, people will know you are the newcomers and they'll help you or even drag you. And you hunt, and how do we know you found them? You take a picture, they run around with their iPads on the floor. If they have to find Shivani or Deep Color or Gurpreet Baja, they will come to my desk and say, hey, we have a newcomer, we want to get a picture with you. And I'll kind of handshake them, welcome them, and that's their record. And they come back to the room and they're rushing, it's like a game chase. Amazing, whatever. So they come back, and whoever gets more gets rewarded. But I think what really gets them going is they never forget. So I know they can't meet everybody in the office through that. The gamified application and the notes will help them. But I think a few people or departments they meet or the landmarks they discover, they never forget it. And they enjoy it. They also got a taste of the floor. People got to see them in a more informal environment. So I thought that was one of the ways in which we made certain things fun, and they build relationships within themselves and other people on the floor. I still meet them and say, hey, remember you got a photo click with me. and I was an absolute stranger for them. But I think that really helps. So these are one of the few things which you can do, for which you don't really need any infrastructure or technology. Just the different way you think about certain things. How about letting them enter with a nice music? Yeah, why is it so dull when they enter? It's like a new VIP in your office. Won't you want to make them feel good? And everything doesn't cost money or infrastructure. It's just about how you look at things and how you make them
Sure. Gurpreet, I'm moving to the next section,
I'm sure we're going to have Gurjeet and Shivin back in a couple of seconds. I think we have lost connectivity with them. Meanwhile, I request you all to please keep sending in your questions using the hashtag #LNDweek. And this has been a great conversation so far. Gurpreet has been mentioning and giving experiences of what has been the best practices at Make My Trip. And I'm sure Shivin has a lot of great questions lined up for Gurpreet in the coming couple of minutes. So just stay tuned.
hello, hello.
Yes, Gurpreet.
Sorry, I think there was a bad connection somewhere.
Not at all, not at all. So you were talking about how in your organization you have a different set of culture that you follow.
Yeah.
I'm sure Shivan is going to join back with the next question. So meanwhile, you could please share your experiences on the same.
Sure, absolutely. I think it's so important that, especially with Gen Y as a context of this discussion, that uh, they're really interested in that. They're not really interested in what their job is specifically, but because honestly they believe they can do this job at maybe five more places. But the reason what's more important for them is, I want to do this job with you, whether it's you as a manager or it's you as an organization. So that personalization need is so important for Gen Y.
Mm.
Now, what's the implication at an org level is that you have to open up your culture cards very early, and it should hit them right away, good or bad. And that's where, let's say, when we talk about onboarding or even recruiting, your emails, even the interactions when you have when you're hiring them, they should speak up your culture. And even if you don't show, they will pick it up, and they will either make or not make a decision because they don't want to be around, and that they're so particular about it. And money can't hold them, even roles can't hold them, even company brands cannot hold them if the culture is not good. So I think we have to look at flexible cultures, we have to look at open cultures, and we have to look at more informal cultures. This is the need of the hour for the Gen Y.
Right. So we have another question coming up, which is going to be on the similar lines of what you have been sharing. So this question is from Muthu Lakshmi. Her question is, how do we balance the shifting career aspirations of Gen Y? And can you share about how you do your career development program at Make Matrix? Any experiences that you have?
Because what's how do they see learning or development? And I think career is really an outcome of that. But I think maybe to address the career first, one is, uh, I think when what we really see here, especially with Gen Ys and generally, is that they really want to look at multiple career opportunities. I don't think we are now working with people largely who want to have unidimensional careers, and we've already seen it. You want to build several parallel careers. So I've seen people say that, okay, I'm a business head, but I want to be a marketing head, and then I want to be a mobile head or a content head one day, and I
Mm.
won't mind becoming an HRBP one day. Now that can be a nightmare for anybody planning a career path, but
Mhm.
that's the reality, that they want to do a bit of everything. And that's what they excel upon. And we all ask our parents, how did you teach in school for 25 years? That's reality. They want varied experience, but not necessarily vertical. So I think that's a very big one. Instead of taking it as a negative, I personally take it very positively, because I think, oh, thank God the guy wants to do something else, because if everybody wants this, then who will fill into it? But I think it's actually better for an LNG or a talent department to manage Gen Y than earlier, because remember, they are open for different options. You can have a discussion, and you can actually offer him 4 roles now instead of one, because they are ready to do 4 things. In fact, they will be gunning to do four. I have seen a lot of everybody doesn't want to be a people manager. Now that's a big one for me, which is a shift from a career orientation perspective. Uh, Orgs have to make the individual career paths more stronger, more incentivized, equally valuable in terms of compensation, benefits, in terms of impact. But like for example, what stops somebody to be an internal consultant and not be a people leader? He still can add a lot of value. What if he's a Sachin Tendulkar, right? I mean, he doesn't want to be a captain, but he's a champion. I mean, God forbid if he was there with traditional talent systems, he'll be out of the play, because you just say you can't manage people and no use to us. So Gen Y is challenging all that to say, I have the brains, I have the guns. Uh, what if I don't want to manage people? I can still help you with a lot of things. So orgs have to really change the way their hierarchies, structures, function. Not everything needs to change, but that's what I said. Flexibility is so important in the way you approach careers, and that's how we are doing it. While we even do development centers, we do programs. We don't look for people leaders necessarily. We do search for them for sure, because you need to have leader people who can lead. But the guy who is functionally excellent, or business analytic wise excellent, what stops me to not make him a data scientist
Mm.
rather than expecting him to be a chief technology officer and having a big team there? So we say, okay, this is a development center report. These are the guys who are really high potentials, but for individual career paths, and these are the ones for people's career paths. So we can look flexibly.
Great, super. We have another question that's come on board. Now, we have been emphasizing a lot on preparing for the Gen Y. So, Kaushik here from @Kaushik says, are we over preparing for Gen Y? And if they are, what are the key learners that we have to keep in mind and adapt? So, are we really over preparing for them, or is it really wanted and needed at this point in time?
Well, I think you have to look at your workforce. You have to look at your future workforce and take a call on that honestly. And as an organization, what percentage of, and it's a proper marketing analysis of and future strategy. If you think that your current workforce and your future workforce of 5 to 10 years will not have anybody born after 81, which I think is quite unlikely, uh, I'll agree with the statement. But I think if the answer to that is yes, they will be, then I think it's actually wise to go and actually see in schools and colleges of what's happening, because that's where your next employee is sitting. Look at his preferences. I mean, they are roaming around with this Facebook, and even doing their papers online and submitting their forms online, getting their license online, and getting everything information at the go. They are the Google generation. In 5 seconds, they can find information. What makes us
Mhm.
think that once they come to our organization, the information should be difficult for them to reach through? They for them to get a appointment with somebody, they have to wait for 10 meetings or approvals and everything. It's the same thing, and that's what, and it's a very blurring line, unlike maybe us earlier, where we can say, okay, at home we are like this, and in our office we are like this. But today's generation just carries himself seamlessly through both, and will have similar expectations. So I don't think we are over preparing. I think we are under prepared sometimes, because that's where we start getting the shock, and we don't understand why it is happening, because they bring a lot of things, but I think it's an art of getting hold of them and keeping them engaged.
Mm. So, in contrary, we have another question from Siromui, which reads, are these organizations, now you have been mentioning about a lot of steps that you at Make My Trip have taken for the Gen Y. So, are other organizations, from your experience, are they in India dynamic enough for these changes, ready for these changes? Because this
Um,
involves a lot of preparedness and their own. So, it's in contrary with what Kaushik has been saying. What are your thoughts on this?
so I think Savita, I don't know where about industry or norms are sitting in terms of their proper practices, but what we've seen and we see a lot of, and we work with, a lot of research companies, and we engage with a lot of people. I think everybody is waking up to it. I don't think, including us, we have perfected the art for sure, because the Gen Y itself is so dynamic that and he's a generation who want personalization, but they also want us kind of a targeted approach towards all of them. So I think in a way it's difficult, honestly, because I think the reason being it requires a lot of change, and not just infrastructure or technological, but I think where organizations might be missing the buses is ignoring it or assuming, and I've seen a lot of comments like, let them come, they will settle down. In our culture, we being a 50-year-old company, we can't change our values, we can't change the way we operate. This generation, will bring in an indiscipline, but we can't change for everybody. I think that's the caution for me, because not that everything they want we have to accept, but how we can maneuver our products which can be more easily digestible, because remember they have to work in your shop. You can't have a person who is socially so well connected not have any social platform in your company for anything.
Hmm.
uh, I mean, you can exist, you can survive, but I don't think you will thrive.
We have Shivan joined in. Meanwhile, he settles. I have one more question from Clippy, who's asking, though Gen Y are most present online, how far is it effective to design online learning programs for them? So we are getting prepared with the iPad point that you mentioned, with a lot of activities which is social learning in their own. So how far do you think are they prepared in your experience, in your point of view?
No, I think, and I think it's good when we're speaking about this, and I think we've learned it from our own experiences that it's not as simple as it sounds. And maybe I think let me guess one of the things which I thought I'll keep for this session, that what sort of learning approach we should take for this. Should everything go online, given is the tech generation so quite obvious? I think the answer is a big no, and we've learned it. We started a few things which haven't worked. And for us to realize that the guy needs as much of technological support or facility as much as he needs personalization and human touch.
Hmm.
So I think as a broader way, 100% technology support and nothing else. I don't think that's the answer, because the answer is in blended approach, where I think a lot of hard work has to happen within the company and not with that tech vendor who possibly can bring in all the answers. The answers are not in the technology. Probably the answer is in the marriage you do with the technology and what you stand for. To give you an example, I think when we did the onboarding program, there was a choice where we said, okay, we'll put everything gamified, just don't even bring them together in a room. Don't even have a facilitator.
Hmm.
Don't even fly them to your office. Let them just join on their seat and finish the game, and they'll get on to their work. And we consciously took a call that no, we are a very high touch company. Employee connect matters so much. Nobody can replace a human connect. So we blended both. So while you play a game, there is still a facilitator around to answer questions. We built some offline games which involves, as I said, running around, talking to people. We involved games where you interact with real leaders. I know even you've seen them on videos. Uh, Getting an online learning system where he can do a course on mobile, brilliant, because he's the guy on the move, and he can't wait for one day to join. Give him everything, give him knowledge and bites, but so important to also give him mentoring, coaching, and build things around redefining career paths. uh, what about certain skills they're not good at, Savita? Like, for example, and I must speak about this, that while there are certain things which Gen Y has picked up, there are a lot of things they're not good at because of the way they're being brought up, of superficial, on demand information. They don't go into the depths as the earlier generation has gone. So their reasoning, their analytic, even their written English because of the change of SMS language. I find that it is kind of dropped a bit. People management, handling tough situations, basic budgeting, financial awareness. Our parents were far more better at that. So I think these are the skills which have to be taught in a different way. And it's not all rosy picture. They also come with their baggages, which is our responsibility to build them up, not just through technology, but also through offline blended approaches. But you involve them a lot. That's the change. You give them a training program, help them pick up things, and go with it.
Absolutely. Shivin, would you be back with the video?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we have so on the learning section itself, we have uh, a query from Nidhi Stan. He is asking what kind of activities or impacting social networks can result in learning for Gen Y.
Sorry, your voice was breaking, Shivin. Can you say that once again?
What kind of activities or impacting social networks can result
Um,
in learning for Gen Y?
Okay, so how do they learn basically? What works better? So I think very simply, I think I will list down a few observations which I've had. One, for them, doing is more important than knowing. So this is a generation which is not obsessed with knowledge too much, but is obsessed with being able to do this. So I think experiential methods where you make them do things, give them a bit of yarn or knowledge, whatever. But as the Nintendo example, Angry Birds example, let them play with it, and that's the way they learn, and they enjoy learning more by doing things. So whether it's your training program, whether it's your onboarding, whether it's anything, or a new project, or the assignment he's got, they love to jump in the pool rather than being handheld too long. Then we also have a need for immediacy. So I think it's a very restless, as you said, the broadband 4 Mbps and 12 Mbps generation where you can't hold back a lot of information for them. So I think from a training perspective, make everything available. I know, don't actually say, okay, I can't share the PowerPoints and I can't share this, and for this you have to go. That irritates them. They need the information not just in the classroom. Once he goes back to work, how can I go back? Let's say if I'm selling Thailand in Make My Trip context, I attended a Thailand training, but when I'm selling to the customer, can you give me a method where right on my desktop, if I use a tool or something, it only gives me that information which I'm talking to the customer right at that moment. So how do you make your tools more immediate at the workplace? Uh, they love trial and error approach to problem solving. I've seen that working really well. So again, let them do, let them make errors, and that's the way they learn the best. It may not look good, but I think that works better. They also have very low attention spans, and that's one thing I've continuously noticed now almost for a decade, that you can't keep them grilled because this is a generation who's done a bit of Facebook, a bit of Pinterest, a bit of martial arts, a bit of diving. They're not maybe experts in any one of them, but they like to switch gears. They listen to all types of music. Now we don't have somebody who listens to music only. We have very little attention span, so big challenge, and pushes us to raise our bars in terms of every single slide or information in a workshop. uh, it has to be interesting. It can't be a session. It can't, be a full text of slides. It can't be a session where for 30 minutes they haven't spoken a word. Uh, Also, the way they learn, collaborative learning, give them assignments or activities where they can work together. So things like group projects, group presentations, brainstorming, even coming back a day later and presenting something. I think you'll be amazed to see what they can do, which you think they'll never be able to do once you leave them to yourself. They're far, I mean, if they can learn Facebook, Twitter, everything around the world for which all of us have struggled, and a 5-year-old can learn iPad, that tells you something. That there's so much in their head. But if you leave them alone in a particular controlled environment, they have that visual, non-linear, virtual learning need. They are visual. So I think visuals are so important now. Like we are trying to launch. organizational competency and values and behaviors, I'm particularly making sure that the communication of that doesn't have the word competency. They don't understand jargons. Uh, Instead of showing a value or a behavior, I'm gonna put up a theme of a road trip and actually showing one of the behaviors like connecting the dots to something visually. And that is what I know will stick to them on a poster and not the detailed descriptions of the values or methods. So visual works a lot.
Sure. Uh, a similar question which Silpi Gupta has is, though Gen Y are more present online now, how far it will be effective to design online learning programs for them? So she's asking the effectiveness of such online programs for Gen Y.
What I've seen is that, I mean, if administered properly and marketed properly, they will do well. Why? Because it goes with their natural style. Uh, I almost see this as a death of classroom. Not really like all classroom programs. We do a lot of sessions here where we get together, we talk, but those are not the only ones which we look forward for development. So I think coming back to the questions, online programs, yes, I think it's a big yes because it goes with the flow. But it does bring a challenge of how do you track effectiveness, but you have to mix it up. I mean, I would say that we do it like this. We say, okay, let's say if you want to do a managerial workshop for our young managers, there is something which they see online before they come. Uh, there's something offline online which they see after they go. These are like bites from the best videos and that's on their mobile for tips. Uh, but there's something which they bring to the class, like they have to talk about at least one video which they have seen and what were their reflections. And I don't have any PPT, they all share within themselves. And we believe more in conversation. So one person can come and say, okay, I learned this. What do you think? Works, doesn't work? That's what works with them. So while I'm using an online medium, I cannot discount the collaborative effort whether it's virtual like what we're doing right now, what stops us from doing sessions like this together rather than waiting for a offline, completely offline learning systems. But I think it has to be blended. It can't just be online because they need human
Uh,
touch. They're very, very particular about that.
right. Khalid Raza has a similar point of view. He's asking, are you focusing on learning on mobile? I think what he means is mobile and app that
Oh yes, I think surely is, and why shouldn't we? Because everything is getting onto mobile. I mean, you're buying how you're even checking your houses, your flights, your travel, your next jobs, everything on mobile. So I think there isn't anything wrong in looking it as one of the additional mediums, but not of course the only medium. You can't push everything on mobile. It has its own limitations there. And also, there's a lot of technological work which needs to happen to optimize everything, which can be shown on a mobile. But I think if you have the right vendors and technology, you must use it because we've been trying to do this. For example, we do a lot of quizzes, whether it's quizzes related to knowledge, whether it's quizzes related to engagement or culture. Now we have switched to a tool where the quiz is mobile enabled. So even the person is on the move, uh, it's a seamless. It's like you play on your Android phone. You can actually see all the information, whether it's an employee survey or anything. And you know what? We start thinking that he can also do it on a laptop. But you know what? It's a big kick to give him on a mobile. It's a big experience to give. Don't all of us love something the moment there's a new mobile app for Zomato.com? I think the product hasn't changed, but your experience has changed. HR should think the same way that what are the smaller touch points, if not everything, if we start giving it on our mobile, aren't you delighting him? Or aren't you differentiating yourself from 10 others? So I think I mean, it can be used for sure, but again, one way is not the answer. You can't just say, okay, we've gone mobile and let's go mobile and everything. but we must use it. I mean, in whichever way possible.
I think we're going to have Shivan on the call joining us once again. Meanwhile, we can just take another question. So we have Ankita who has a question, which is, we talk about having implications of and having new learning methodologies for the Gen Y. So what kind of cost is justified for this change? Is there a particular cost one should keep aside, or is it something which is absolutely on the spree? What kind of cost?
Honestly, I think the moment you talk of technology, yes, it will entail a cost. Some of it can be managed inside the organization if you have a good tech department. Some of them, there are organized players, which I must admit. Let's say today I want to get a HRIS or an employee database management system. This also enables mobile usage and integration, like a Facebook page of the company, and you can just work the way you work, all of that jazz. But it does cost you. I think that's a strategic call, which as a company you have to take to say that uh, maybe we are moving towards a time where this is becoming the norm and not an exception. And I think every company possibly can take their call in terms of how urgent that is. That doesn't mean, I mean, it is something which you won't die if you don't do it. So it depends on what priority you're sitting at. But while I say this, as I mentioned earlier, everything does not entail a cost. For example, you can be far more Gen Y centric without even great technological advances or innovations. Just the way you treat people, just the way you celebrate things. I mean, for example, there's a big need for them to make a difference, right? How about your volunteering program? How about, like, we do an internal mentorship program where it's not formal. I mean, we call it MMT Guru. I mean, anybody can come and talk anything to anybody. Like, and you don't need to be a leader or anything. I mean, if you think you're an Excel champ, check with the L&D team. I will market you as an Excel guru, get people in, and people will learn from you. I mean, we are planning a Photoshop workshop by a really young fellow who's going to teach maybe the senior most fellows. I think it's far more than restricting it to a technology-based discussion, but finding out the needs. Look at their work-life balance expectation. There are so many things which I think purely because the Gen Y is there, uh, you can take care of without getting big tech. But I think that's my whole answer. Like that everything doesn't entail cost. Maybe I think we should ask, and that's what we do. We have our committee members where we get young fellows. I said I can't think after that. Get a young fellow to design your one of few of your policies, and I think you'll be surprised at what ideas they come up with.
Archibald, would
If
you?
I'm a
Yeah.
business HR, Sabita,
Yes, well, yeah.
hello.
Yes, Shivan, you can carry on. We can hear you.
Okay. So, what are the concluding questions? If I'm a business HR and I need to,
I think we have some technical issues at
Yeah.
Shivan's end. So let's continue. So we have another question here. I know, Gurpreet, we are actually pouring and shooting you with a lot of Twitter questions that are coming online. The next one that's coming is, you spoke about a lot of Gen Y and how do we engage them. So have you observed what are the learning styles most preferred by Gen Y? Is there anything which is most preferred that you have seen in your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. I think doing is more important than knowing, as I said. I've always seen them, I think the moment we put them in action, they will learn more. And that's the way they want to learn. So even if it's a new assignment, or let's say there's a young guy who's become a manager, um, he likes to be entrusted in, and being trusted upon. So I think that is the first one. The moment you make it the learning process more practical, I think it drives a lot of traction. I think another one is inclusion, which I found the more inclusive you make his learning journey, where he has a lot of say in what he wants to learn, from whom he wants to learn. I think that is the another big idea. The manager thinks they should go, but rather L&D can offer solutions. And he can discuss with his manager to say, okay, I think this makes more sense. And maybe for this thing, I don't want to go to a training program. I just want to spend time with you informally, or I want to spend, let's say, 2 hours a day with this person, and I would learn on the job there. So I think a lot of involvement people come up and say, okay, I don't think there's anything inside the company which can let me know that particular tech skill which I want, but I'm running the program for myself on Coursera, right? It costs me this much. Can we all pay for it? Now that's where this generation is very very quick in owning up their learning needs, finding the solutions, maybe even faster than you on that front. But I think that shouldn't make you insecure, and that's how our approach is that okay, if there is a certain budget I had anyway had to spend on you or your company or your department, even if that doesn't come from you as a first lead, I can have a follow-up chat and set you up. Like if you know a great trainer who has trained you in the last company, and if you want to bring it up, bring it on. What if he's not an and who cares? I mean, we'll talk about it and we'll set them up. So I think learning styles, doing, make them do a lot rather than the knowledge download, involve them in that, and make it fun. I think that of learning style. I think that works wonders.
Wow, great. So you have actually summarized almost the whole of the discussion by the last bit saying that, making it fun. So I have one last question. If we can utilize 1 or 2 minutes to that before I wind up the session, because this question looks interesting again. You mentioned about the various changes that needs to be brought into getting a Gen Y learning experience and thereon. So who needs to bring this change? Who needs to lead this change that has to be brought? It has to be done by the CHRO of the organization, or can it be at an individual level? What has been your experience and what do you say? We'll take another minute or two and we'll wind up.
So, a good one, because I think now we are hitting on the answers and where the answer lies and where the buck stops. I think since we're talking about people and we're talking about a possible change in the way we handle people, uh, it has to, I think the CHRO has to be the convening guide for this and the key sponsor and the ambassador. While I say this, I think it's the leadership of the company, which includes the CXO and the top leadership. That's why basically and the scale of this concept, whether it's our positioning, whether it's the investment, whether it's the approach, needs to be vetted. I think it needs to travel from the top because it's not just an HR issue; it's a business issue. Because ultimately, who's going to benefit from all this? If I am more engaged, powerful, creative employees ready to put their efforts and take the company to the next level, it is actually the business. But since it's a people demographic, and it's the people factor which we are hitting on. I think the CHRO has the biggest burden of taking the mission, but I think CXOs and the leadership have a larger burden to let that not be an HR mission, but get that buy-in from the business to say that your teams are now changing, and that's what we need to do differently. Whether we pay them in a certain way, our behavior to them in a certain way, the respect which they need, the opportunities which they need, the systems, the processes, everything. And then it doesn't become an HR issue at all. But it has to start from there.
Great. Thank you so much, Gurpreet, for actually answering so many questions at one go, one after the other. Before we wind up, thank you once again, listeners and everybody who is online watching us live, for being a part of the third L&D Leadership Week Twangout. I wanted to take some more questions because we have a couple of questions still unanswered on Twitter. So we'll try and take them offline, maybe on Twitter. We had a very quick changing winner. So we are nearing the end of the session. So we have the winning name for the most active listener on Twitter. And the Twitter handle is at Khalid Raza 9. So Khalid Raza, congratulations once again. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, your questions, and being an active listener. So you have won the 1-year sprint and the digital subscription from People Matters, which will reach you very, very soon. Congratulations once again, Khalid. With this, we come to an end to a super exciting L&D Leadership League Twangout. We want to thank you, Gurpreet. It has been an absolute pleasure to have you and you answering each question one after the other. Very, very big thank you to you.
Thanks, Savita. Thanks for the opportunity. Pleasure.
Pleasure. Absolute pleasure. Shivin, it has been great to have you as a co-host, and I'm sure we'll have a great time and a few more great hangouts together. Thank you, Shivin, very much.
Thanks, Savita. Sorry for the network issues.
Not at all, not at all. A very big thank you to one and all, and for being a fantastic audience. We'll see you once again with a very interesting topic on what are the various shifts that organization needs to follow, which is going to be led by Tanvi Gautam on the 8th of October. So do block your calendars on the 8th of October between 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Look forward to the next Twangout, and till then, have a great and inspiring weekend. Thank you so much, and have a great evening. Thank you very much.